Hi guys, Pete the Wargamer here with a slightly different Primaris conversion video. This time, I'll be creating a new Homebrew Space Marine chapter, fleshing it out with some background and special rules, before finally showing you how you can represent this chapter on the tabletop. The first of which are the Imperial Blades. My inspiration for the Imperial Blades came heavily from the Empire of Warhammer Fantasy, which, in turn, borrowed their aesthetic from the Landsnecks, a mercenary force of 16th century Europe. You can immediately spot many similarities between the Empire and the Landsnecks, and it's some of these iconic features that I wanted to incorporate into my chapter. In terms of background, I wanted to explore a chapter that remained entirely loyal to the Emperor, but were not perfect visions of virtue. Following on from their Landsneck inspiration, I decided that this character flaw would be their mercenary nature. The Imperial Blades would be more than willing to lend a helping hand to any Imperial force, so long as they were compensated handsomely, taking raw materials, weapons and relics as payment for their services. However, those willing to pay for their price receive fighters that excel in close quarter fighting, choosing swords as their go-to weapon. I can imagine them looking to showcase their skills by seeking out worthy opponents in which to duel in one-on-one combat. Now, to represent these qualities on the battlefield, I've opted for the following successor chapter traits: Duelist and Hungry for Battle. Both of these traits work well for a force that is looking to get up close and personal with the enemy, not only giving them a greater chance to get within a sword's length of their opponent, but also giving them more bite in the combat phase. For the Warlord of the Imperial Blades, the Champion of Humanity seemed like an apt choice. Being more likely to hit enemy characters as well as gaining additional attacks when they're nearby seemed perfect for a leader looking to test their martial prowess in one-on-one combat with a worthy opponent. Now that we have the background and some rules, we can now start to physically form our chapter. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting off with a regular Intercessor Space Marine. You can see that I've partly assembled this particular miniature already. Once you have your base model to work from, we next need to grab some putty to help bulk out the neck joint. I've chosen some Procreate for this task as I find it's easy to work with than green stuff, but the choice is entirely yours. Begin by cutting away roughly equal parts of each colour and mixing them together until you get a solid colour. Make sure you use plenty of water or Vaseline on your hands, tools and work surface to prevent sticking. Once mixed, put this to one side for about 15 minutes to let it cure slightly, which will make it easier to work with. Once it's been left to cure for a while, roll your putty into a small ball roughly the same size as a spherical impression in the Intercessor's neck, before placing the ball into the hole. Next, we want to bring in a head chosen from the plethora of Empire kits. I've gone for a head from the State Troopers kit personally. This head has a much smaller neck than the Primaris heads, which is why we need to bulk out that joint. But we want to choose the head position now before the putty fully dries. Apply a small amount of water or Vaseline to the putty and then lightly press the head into the desired pose. Once you're happy, remove the head and you'll be left with a small impression. Now while we leave this putty to dry, we can start to add a few more adornments to the armour, very easily with the use of some chains. The chain I've opted for here is 1mm by 1.5mm, which is a good size to stay within the scale of a Primaris Marine. Start by adding a small dab of superglue to the starting point, just underneath the left shoulder pad, and attach your chain. Hold it in place until the glue dries. Once dried, apply another dab of superglue just above the right hip and pull the chain tight across the body and hold it against a spot until it's dry. Continue to wrap the chain around the body to the left shoulder again and cut the chain to the desired length before using a little more glue to hold it in place. If your chain is still loose, apply small amounts of glue to make it more solid. The next step is much simpler and involves taking various pendants and adornments from various Empire kits, the Flagellants kit is good for this, and attaching them to the chain with a little more superglue. Once your putty has dried, usually after leaving it overnight, you can also glue your chosen head into the slot we created earlier, once again using superglue as the two joins are not both plastic. The final steps in constructing our Imperial Blade are much simpler and involve taking various components from the Empire's kits such as swords, daggers, wreaths and other interesting details and using some plastic glue to fix these into place. Which components you choose and where you put them are really up to you and what you have available. So now that we have our miniature, I could then pick a scheme and paint it. I knew I wanted something asymmetrical that features red and white, much like the Talabheim scheme. However, I don't want to use the quartered scheme as this would look too similar to the Howling Griffins. I found my answer after looking at another Imperial Fist successor chapter, the Sons of the Phoenix, who are white with a purple right arm and left knee pad. Being children of the same chapter, it would make good sense for the Imperial Blades to also use a similar pattern. So to start things off, I primed with grey before lightly spraying grey Seer, followed by white scar through an airbrush to create some basic zenithal shading. I then hit this white with the contrast paint Apothecary White to add some subtle shading into the recesses. The red areas were coated with Blood Angels Red before the recesses were lined with Flesh Tearers Red to add some deeper shading into those areas. I followed this up with some Cygor Brown over the brown leather areas of the model before using a little Wyldwood to create darker recesses and also to create a little texture in the leather surface. For the various metal areas, I wanted to create the effect of blackened steel, so I needed something dark. Black Templar was a good choice for this, as I could also use it in the joints between the armor panels, and when thinned with some contrast medium, could also be used to create a grey beard. To paint the areas of gold on some of the adornments and the sword hilts, I decided to use some Nazdreg Yellow to create a rough gold appearance. As my Imperial Blade features the helmetless head, I used a coat of Guilliman Flesh across his face before focusing Darkoath Flesh around some of the more prominent features to really boost the detailing. You may have noticed that I've opted to use almost entirely contrast paints for this model. This is because they are very quick to apply whilst also giving a decent result, perfect for creating concept pieces such as this. Now finally, to complete the metal finish on the weaponry and other areas of blackened steel, I made use of a pencil and lightly dragged it across the edges. This is a really simple and quick way to create a dark metal appearance. And here we have the finished miniature, who I cleaned up with some grey Seer and white scar before applying a simple basing scheme. If you enjoyed this more involved style of conversion video and would like to see more of the same thing, then let me know and leave your suggestions for other chapters in the comments below. If you're looking to support me in making these videos, you can do so by checking out my Patreon page, which will allow you to donate to me from as little as $1 a month, which helps to pay for the miniatures, paints and equipment that I use to produce these videos. And for anyone looking to chat about all things wargaming with others who enjoy my channel as well, I've set up a Discord server which you can find a link to in the description below. So, the only thing left to say is, thanks for watching and goodbye.